plants, one containing DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and then that second plant that kind of inactivates the stomach enzyme called monoamine oxidase, if I pronounced that correctly. But the question of kind of what came first here is interesting as well, the chicken or the egg. Do you think that, because if they were given information about how to make this brew from some of these entities that they captured, what happened there? I mean, they have to do you think that they were under the influence of another hallucinogenic drug and were given the information on how to kind of make a better one? Or how do you think that?
Clearly, and that's what they say themselves, which is my yardstick. The indigenous Amazonian people I asked said, okay, so how did you guys figure out this ayahuasca recipe here, which is a complicated recipe, as you pointed out, like the necessary combination of two plants that are physiologically distinct. Well, they said, in particular, datura. Datura is has been cultivated, it would seem, for 5,000 years. And so datura is a very powerful hallucinogen. I'd say it's a dangerous one, and I could see why. Like you would send cosmonauts into outer space, they were sending shamans into inner space with datura, and one can understand why one of the first questions that they would ask is, how can we get to this space without having to take datura? Because it really is hard on the hard drive. It kind of makes people crazy, and even the Indians say so. Sometimes, like with the Aguarona Shivaro, they have this device where they tie the person who's taking datura down just to protect him from himself, because otherwise they go wandering off into the forest for days and they can run into trouble. And then not remember anything. That's one of the main problems with datura. This is one of the beauties of ayahuasca, is that you have these intensely visionary experiences, and then you remember more or less everything. It's like dreams where you see outlandish stuff, but your observer is intact.
Right.
Whereas with datura, you come back and it seems to have erased your memory of the thing.
See, that's an interesting point. So does that to you mean that this is a way for us to maybe enter into this world consciously, in that sense, that we might actually go there every night when we dream, but the fact is that when we come back out again, we haven't had our conscious mind there, so we basically only have these vague recollections of the dream?
Well, I mean, some people are clearly better dreamers than others. I myself am a relatively mediocre dreamer, but a relatively good hallucinator. And I think this is kind of like a talent. Some people are good with string instruments, and other people are good at percussion, and some people can sing, but not many people can do all three at the same time.
Right.
And just why you have affinities for one and not for the other is mysterious. Some people in the Western world living in big cities have intense, significant visionary dreams on a regular basis.
Yeah.
They don't need ayahuasca, one could say.
They can do it naturally without those compounds in that sense, and they can tap into it. I mean, we had Rick Strassman with us on the program recently, and we talked about one of these substances, DMT, which is in ayahuasca as well, and we talked about this fact that it can even seem, one of the scientific theories here surrounding DMT is obviously that some people will have this naturally in their body at specific times for various reasons, more than others, and so forth. And this molecule itself could induce people to go into these states more often than other people. So some might even doesn't have to take these kinds of brews or plants or what have you in order to actually end up in this place as well. So that's an interesting point, I think.
I mean, I consider myself to be a pretty hard-boiled rationalist. I don't mean that to be showing off or anything. In fact, I think it to a certain extent it means a little bit square-headed, really.
Right.
My first instinct in any given situation is to get a global picture and to understand the numbers and the quantities. I want to sort of that's the kind of understanding I naturally yearn for. Well, these substances help me think outside of that box, give me new angles, loosen me up a little bit, show me spirals where I would have gone at things frontally. So it's actually a pretty good compliment for a fellow like me. Other people who are already, let's say, very sensitive artists and who are already who might have a hard time keeping it together in the day-to-day world, but who have a strong sensitivity to all kinds of intangible and invisible stuff, I think need these vegetal tools probably less than other people. So I think everybody's got to find clearly you don't need ayahuasca to have a fulfilled life. You don't even need it to have a visionary life. As I was saying, you can just dream and do it naturally.
Yeah.
There are also techniques to modify consciousness, like with drums and deep breathing and yoga and so on, where you can work on that perfectly naturally, one could say. I also think that taking plants is pretty natural, finally. But clearly, recommending to anybody that they should take a psychoactive plant is risky, and you can't know. You can't know what the effect of the plant is going to be on somebody. I mean, if somebody's borderline schizophrenic and they have a strong hallucinogenic experience, it can very well send them over to the other side, and this is not a good thing. So I don't think anybody should recommend to anybody else to take a psychoactive substance. And if anybody is, in doubt and they want to start looking at these kinds of things, they should probably start with the techniques that do not involve substances or plants.
That's a very good idea, and I think that also personally what we're interested in here is more of the effects, so to speak, of this and what can be extracted. And I would definitely agree with you in the sense that it seems to be that this particular state is one that can be achieved by so many different means. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be the one thing, obviously, but because this is about what you can learn from the experience that you're having,
right,
and how you can implement that in your own life. If it widens your perspective, and as you said, Jeremy, before, if it can help you to kind of break out of if you're a bit square-headed, or if you have a very narrow reality tunnel, to put it that way, then these things can be good to open that up, those aspects of us. But exactly, necessarily doesn't have to be the same thing for everybody. But what if we look at this from a little bit more? I don't know if we can put the terms good and evil or something like that on all of this, but it's an interesting little side note to this, that the fact that humanity then seems to be driven by in many cases these kinds of vision-induced states. If you look at it from that point of view, if all the inventions in our world, be they technological or what have you, have come from this particular source, it might and could even be argued that humanity, if you will, then are being driven by communication from beyond, from another world, if you will, almost. How do you view that, and do you think that that's what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I think I wouldn't want to speak for all of humanity, but I'm a member, so I have my voice. I think anthropology has shown that more or less every society in the world has an opening for modification of consciousness, one way or another. Including intoxication, and it can be with alcohol or tobacco or opium or what have you. I mean, human beings have found multiple ways of modifying their consciousness, and actually animals are interested in modifying their consciousness. And if they find apples that have gone alcoholic, all kinds of elephants and cows and horses are just going to go to town and get drunk, in fact, And getting drunk seems to be a pretty widely shared pleasure. I mean, some religions have other points of view, and some religions are against alcohol and in favor of hashish, and it goes on and on. So, but nevertheless, it does seem to be an almost universal among human beings, this affection for getting out of ordinary consciousness from time to time. And then in many cultures, associating intoxication, with what one could call the religious or the spiritual or the sacred or the special thing, and not just entertainment for the pleasure of getting out of our box, but also for getting in contact with the more subtle energies around one as a way of actually studying the cosmos, of negotiating with nature and trying to make sense of things like illness or even trying to heal it. And I think that humanity